All right, joined now by King County Councilmember Girmay Zahilay. How are you?
I'm doing all right, sir. We just talked about this, but I'm making it. I'm making it. It's a tough world out there, but I'm pushing through. How about you?
About the same, and especially this topic that we're talking about right here. I wish we were communicating over different circumstances. We're gonna have to bring you back so you can tell us some good news that's happening across your district. But the prosecutor's office released this shots fired report for 2021, and I think that most people who live in King County intuitively just knew that it was going to be bad. But I mean, the numbers came out, and there's definitely a spike in gun violence in King County, sir.
There is. We see 460 shooting victims this past year, which is 56% above the 4-year average, and fatal shooting victims were at 88, which is 64% up from the 4-year average. And so we're hitting milestones in a really negative way. People are being badly hurt, badly injured, and dying because of gun violence.
Yeah, and we've actually got some overlays here from the report that was released out. I think the first one here is the total shootings and shots fired. I mean, 1,405 shots fired here, and I think what they talked about here was a 26% increase over the 4-year average.
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And in my view, it's a product of all of the issues and crises that are compiling right now since 2020.
The other one here is, and this is something that we talking. I guess everybody kind of knows the concentration of gun violence, and we put up this second slide here is I think geographic. And of course, we see Seattle, but a lot into South King County, and we're going to touch on that here in a second. But we've been talking about for a while that we're seeing more and more gun violence south of the city of Seattle.
Yeah, we're seeing poverty being pushed out into south of Seattle. We're seeing all of the societal issues that used to be in, the CD and South Seattle. Now poverty is moving south. People can no longer afford to live in city limits, and so all of those issues with people being unable to afford housing, unable to afford mental health services, unable to afford opportunities. Those are all being pushed south, and so of course we will see gun violence being pushed south as well.
Right. I'm gonna skip over the third slide and go right here into the breakdown of race.
Yep.
And this is I think it's the next one. No, this is this one right here. It's the last slide over there, Salma. Oh, that's the very last one there. And is this the breakdown of race here? Well, it says you can pull it up. Go over. It says here that 81% of the shooting victims, you can remove it. 81% of the shooting victims, 379 people were people of color. Nearly half, 48% or 225 people of all shooting victims were Black or African American. 85% of shooting victims, 390 people, were men, and 28% of shooting victims, 133 people, were between the ages of 18 to 24.
It's not shocking, but it's still just as devastating to hear it every single time. By every single metric of well-being, you know how it is. Our communities, Black communities, are lagging, and that is systemic racism. We have our Black collective wealth is marching towards zero every single year. Educational attainment, educational opportunity, poverty, all of these issues are localized in certain communities. And so that's why you see these kind of disproportional negative outcomes with gun violence as well.
Right. Now, these are the numbers, sir. From your position over there on the King County Council and working within King County government, what are some of the solutions?
There are upstream solutions and there are immediate gun violence solutions. Upstream solutions is everything you can imagine that helps the well-being of a human or a community. So affordable housing, good education, jobs, healthcare, childcare, every single element that you can think of that makes a human being thrive and a community thrive. Those are the upstream solutions, and those are things that we're working on. And then the downstream solutions, not to use jargon, but are the things that, once somebody is already in these environments that are not safe, how do you keep them from not being shot or not shooting? And those kinds of responses can be things like community space activation, like you see down in Rainier Beach with organizations like Southeast Network, bringing food and professionals that are trained in de-escalation and better lighting to make sure these areas that are hot for shootings end up being activated and not seeing the shootings. You can see people like organizations like Community Passageways, Choose 180, that are out there forming relationships and mentoring and making sure that the young people who are most at risk for shooting or being shot are having some intervention and having the things that they need to make better life decisions. You see organizations like Regional Community Pathways that are making sure that young people who are going to be trapped in the cycle of our criminal legal system that keeps them from getting jobs and keeps criminal records on them, that keep them from upward mobility. Instead, they have a community-based support system, so again, that they can make better decisions. You have community centers, you have after-school activities, you have programs that keep guns that are not meant to be with a certain person off the streets, stolen guns, for example. You have programs like safe storage, so that when people go home, they can lock their guns up and they don't fall in the wrong hands. The list goes on and on and on, but there are a host of solutions that we can provide both upstream and downstream, but we need more resources for them, and we need better coordination across every single government and nonprofits and our hospital systems as well.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that. You said more coordination across government and all the different stakeholders. Last year, you wrote an op-ed, and where you talked about you need that gun violence is a public health crisis or a public health emergency. And you said that COVID-19 had given a blueprint to when everybody is on the same page and the same message and has the same objective, how government and community stakeholders and everyone in between can all work together. And I mean, you highlighted some examples, some that you listed right there: activation of spaces and repurposing of spaces and some everything else. But as someone who kind of is viewing this through the eye of the public, somebody who lives, in these neighborhoods, and someone who covers it, I find that oftentimes, yeah, I don't really hear anybody else, is what I'm trying to say. In that, and I talk a lot about the Seattle City Council, and I think that they could definitely be more vocal. But, considering that it was the county prosecutor yesterday, and you got the county or earlier this week, and there's a whole county council. Like, what is it going to take to get King County Council and the Seattle City Council and these other 39 municipalities, but especially the ones most impacted, to really get on board on a similar messaging or a plan for this disruption?
We need people to get on the same page about what the right solutions are. Right now, we have a system where everybody is fragmented and people will go toward wherever the political winds are blowing on a given year. Right now, we have a political environment that has swung all the way back toward, just lock everybody up, and that will make the problem go away. To the point where we have some people pointing at solutions like regional community pathways, what I described before about making sure that we intervene with young people who are at risk of shooting or being shot or making wrong decisions. We intervene and we get them on the right track. They're pointing at programs like that and saying that's causing gun violence and that's causing crime, even though that program was established like 2 or 3 months ago, and there is no causation between a program like that and increased crime and increased gun violence. To the contrary, I would say it is helping and making sure that young people don't make wrong decisions like that. But because of where the political winds are blowing now, there is political will toward solutions that are not really solutions. And so that is a problem that I consistently see. Rather than all of us coming together, convening, pointing out what are the data proven ways of solving this problem, like we did with COVID-19. It seemed like at least in the early days, everybody was on the same page. We need a science-based approach. We need a public health approach. We need to deploy all of these resources really quickly, make sure that we target the people who are most at risk for catching the virus. Let's transform our physical spaces. All these things that we did with COVID-19 because we were on the same page and because we were coordinating. And again, obviously that some of that has changed in recent months. But we're not able to do that with gun violence because people can't agree to what the solutions are, and because the political momentum shifts every year depending on who's in office, depending on what the climate is at the federal level. And so these are all truly true obstacles to getting the work done.
It's interesting here. What in this conversation, you've named a lot of different groups that are active either upstream or downstream, and the taxpayers of King County, as well as the city of Seattle. City of Seattle has actually put in some money as well into this regional approach around the disruption of gun violence. And what we're seeing right here is there's a lot of conversations that are occurring, but on the county level and with the municipalities, and it should probably happen. People want to get to the bottom of these issues here with gun violence, but I'm not really seeing, and clearly I don't know everything, but I'm not really seeing these organizations that the county has invested money and the taxpayers have invested money for this regional approach. Are they having a seat at the table when these conversations between, say, the county executive and county leaders and the leaders in these municipalities are occurring? Is the people who are on the ground in this regional approach to disrupt gun violence, are they included in those conversations?
So you're asking, Omari, if the community-based organizations that are in programs like RCP or regional peacekeepers, are they being brought to the table to discuss concerns that, for example, the South King County leadership or mayors are bringing up? Is that the question?
Yeah, exactly the question.
Okay. I haven't been on those particular meetings, so I'm not sure who was or wasn't in those conversations, but I do know that a lot of the pushback that you're getting on these programs from certain elected officials is all about campaigning. People weren't saying anything until they announced their campaigns for certain offices, and that goes for people across levels of government. And so is it valuable to bring in community members to just kind of listen to frustrations that, in my view, are often not real good faith disagreements, but political stunts? I don't know. We can have a good debate about that. But I do know those organizations like Regional Peacekeepers, Restorative Community Pathways, they're out there, they're doing the work. King County is supporting them. And so I would say they are doing the work and they're being supported. I don't know if they're being pulled into these kind of campaign style conversations.
Right. Before we let you go, Councilmember Zahilay, what is it that you want your constituents in your district and people in King County as a whole to know about, what efforts or what next steps or how people can get involved in this crisis of gun violence in our community?
I would say that we're in really, really tough times right now. I said this at the Shots Fired call the other day, but these are truly times of turmoil, and we have to really stick together and continue to push on the solutions that we know are more likely to work than others, and not revert back to certain responses like just incarceration and just over policing because we're afraid, and we're rightfully afraid right now. These are scary times, but the increase in gun violence that we're seeing, that's not because we're investing too much in programs like restorative community pathways. That's not because we're investing too much in community-based solutions. That is not what is causing gun violence. We don't have enough resources for those things. That is part of the problem. Right now, we're in an era where, as our problems stack up every single month, whether it's anger and depression and anxiety and the virus, and all these things that make people more likely to shoot or be shot, the tools that we have to respond to those things are increasingly being diminished. The number of mental health beds available, the addiction services beds that are available, hospitals over capacity, shelters over capacity, government services and government workers sick. So our staffing is completely limited. And so there's this huge gap between need and response. And that's what I see as playing out and creating the kind of increase in gun violence that we're seeing. And so we need to put more resources into the solutions. We need to stick together. We need to not hate one another and have emotional reactions to people who are suffering, because it's very easy to have the pendulum swing back to just draconian war on drugs era style things that will just create another broken generation like we've done in the past. And we need to be very careful about that.
All right, King County Councilmember Girmay Zahilay, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Omari. Have a good day.